Okay, good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us tonight. It is a special and distinct honor to get together. But before we begin and before I introduce the evening, I want to spend a moment recognizing that as we are here in the comfort of our New Jersey homes, our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land are experiencing the most horrific terror every moment, every hour, all around the Holy Land. And I hope you fully appreciate and understand the depth of the tragedy of what's going on and how we must be ever stronger individually and as families and as a community to be able to be strong intelligently and educated and be able to stand up for what is truth and what is right and what is correct. And also to know that our individual actions, what we do in our homes, how we talk and how we educate ourselves and our children has an effect on our brothers and sisters in Israel. In 1967, the Rebbe began what became to be known as the Mitzvah Tefillin campaign and the Lighting Shabbos Candles campaign, because our spiritual deeds, our good mitzvot, putting on tefillin, lighting Shabbos candles, has a direct effect. I think today we understand that if you are strong mentally, strong spiritually, then you can also be strong physically. So what we'd like to begin tonight is with a prayer, and I'm going to share my screen, and I will lead the Psalm number 20, for the safety and security of our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land. And you don't have to unmute yourself, but you can read either in Hebrew or in English. And while you're doing that, we were thinking strongly about our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land and finding resolutions in our heart for their safety and security. Let's see if I can get this correctly. Yes, go ahead. Moshe Chaim, please share the screen. Lam natseach mizmar leDavid yancha adinai b'yoyim tzara yisagevcha shem Elehei Yaakov yishlach ezrecha mikodesh umitziyoy misadeka yizkar kol minchaisecha v'hilascha yidashna sela Yitein lecha kilvavecha v'chalatzascha yimalei niranen abishuasecha uv'shem Eloheinu nidgoil yimalei adinoi kol mishalisecha Ata yodayeti ki hoshia adinoi mishichai Yanehu mishmei kadshay b'gvurais yesha yeminayim Eile varecha v'eile basusim Anachnu b'shem Adinoi Eloheinu naskir Heima karu v'nafalu V'anachnu kamnu v'nisaydad Adinoi Hoshia hamelech yaneinu v'yayim koreinu. Thank you, Moshe Chaim, for sharing that. I think in that vein, what we hope to hear tonight and listen to tonight and take away with us tonight our pathways in greater strength, greater resilience, in being better people to ourselves, to the people that we love in our lives. And ultimately, that leads to a stronger personal unit, family unit, community unit, Jewish unit, and the whole world. The better we show up in our lives, the healthier we are, the better the world can be. And no greater place than to start with ourselves. So Valley Chabad's Academy of Jewish Studies, together with a New Jersey mental health initiative, with a grant from the Rabbinical College of Morristown, New Jersey, the headquarters of Chabad, and their new mental health program, we present this wonderful program tonight. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce my father to so many people I care about, and so many people that have walked the journey of growth and connection and deeper meaning in life together with. And I was privileged to grow up with a father, even though when I was growing up, he wasn't a therapist. Maybe that's a good thing. But he always had a story, and he always had a song, and he always had a wonderful way of teaching life's lessons to me. I can clearly say that if there's anything that I have, I'm a direct product of both my father and mother. And the fact that he is out in the field now for, I think, over 15, maybe even 18 years as a therapist is one of the greatest gifts to the people that he is able to spend time with. And I think the work that my father is able to do is life-changing in so many ways. So I've asked him to join us tonight. My father, I think, has his own mix of the style that he works with, but I know that he started off as a specific narrative therapist. And the way I understand that is that we all have the choice how we tell the stories of our lives in the situation. And if we can only choose to see the best side of the stories and make those stories come alive and see the positive, we can all live better lives. But that's me talking. I'm going to allow my dear father to begin the evening, Stories of Change. And we're looking forward. The format tonight, my father will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. If you have questions while the session is going on, please share them directly with me, and I will present them after the talk, after the stories, after the sharing, and also we'll have an opportunity for people to directly ask questions. So without further ado, my dear father, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share. Hoping to somehow inspire change before we receive the Torah again on Monday and Tuesday of next week. And if we can move towards some level of change in our own lives to be receiving the Torah in a more internal, joyful way, it would be worth all our time here. I also want to extend a blessing to all of our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel. I have three grandchildren there, and hoping they're safe, and hopefully I have nephews, nieces, hopefully they are all safe, and all your families in Klal Yisrael, that Hashem protect us and protect the land of Israel, which is what he promised us that he will do. And hopefully it will be there as a shield and a protector for us. So to be a better you is really a lifetime of work, of pushing and stretching yourself. I hope tonight we will just touch the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, of how much and how one can grow and change. Books have been written, many of them, and to really go in depth on this issue, it will take us days, months, maybe some of us have spent years, getting there or trying to get there and somehow accomplish a level of change. But since I have only, as I find out now, 40 minutes, I will try to give you the best that I can within the 40 minutes and hopefully open up a possibility of you thinking about how each one of us can reach some level of change in our own lives. So I'm going to start with a story that is a known story. It's a story you might have heard, but please listen with an open ear, so to speak, and allow me to guide you through the meaning that I will make and hopefully glean from. And somehow understand it maybe a little better. So the story is called The Rusty Kopek. And the Alter Rebbe, which is the main character in the story, the first Chabad Rebbe, he lived from 1745 to 1812. So this must have happened somewhere in the later part of his life, or maybe the mid part of his life as a Rebbe. And just to describe the scene, in a small town, there was a crisis. And the crisis was, again, I'm not sure, but they needed a lump sum of 10,000 ruble to help a family somehow get extracted from some landowner for being put away in a dungeon for non-payment of rent and or something to that effect. There was a desperate need for 10,000 ruble. And the town worked very hard to raise something close to it, but all they came up with was 200 ruble. They were very far away from the 10,000 that they needed. And it just happened that the Alter Rebbe, as we will call him, the first Chabad Rebbe, comes into town and finds out from the town leadership and the rabbi that they're desperate and they need help. And they need 10,000 and they only raise 200 and they have no other possibilities. So when the Alter Rebbe hears this, he said, while coming into town, I passed this beautiful mansion. Is that belong to a Jewish owner? And they said, yes. And he said, did you go to him? Did you ask him? Is he capable? And they said, it's a lost cause. Every time we go to him, he has this kopek. One kopek is like a 5 cents or a penny that he offers up. And all of us who have tried with him almost throw back the kopek in his face or in his possession, and they discouragingly walk away. So the Alter Rebbe says, I'm going to see him, and I want you, the rabbi, to come along with me, but on one condition, that you say nothing. Let me deal with everything. I need your promise not to say anything. And the rabbi said, it's a waste of time. We need to go somewhere else. We need to go maybe to the town you came from. We need to go to other people. The Alter Rebbe says, we will go to this man, Moshe the Miser. That's what he was called. And sure enough, they start on the little journey. They come to the front, beautiful door. They knock, and the door opens with a servant. Says, can I help you? So we'd like here to see Reb Moshe. And he shows them into the study. They sit down. 5 minutes later, the man appears and said, how can I help you? And the Alter Rebbe goes on to describe what it is that he's needed for and what it is that they came to see him for. And at that point, after listening with a very attentive, very compassionate way, in his own way, he says, please wait. And he leaves the room. They hear the safe opening up. And sure enough, he comes back with this kopek that for 40 years or so, he's been trying to give to someone and no one took it. And he offers it to the Alter Rebbe. To his surprise, the Alter Rebbe takes the kopek, puts it in his pocket, writes a receipt for the kopek and says, thank you so much for the help that you've given us. And at that point, Alter Rebbe gets up, tells the rabbi to follow him, and they start walking towards the front door. When they're almost by the front door, suddenly Moshe calls them back, says, Rebbe, please come back. I want to hear more of what the story is about. The Alter Rebbe sits down, retells the story, gives it more details. And the man says, I really feel bad for this family. Let me see if I can give you something more. He leaves, comes back with a ruble. He gave a penny, now he's giving $1. The Alter Rebbe gives him a receipt again, thanks him profusely, and starts getting up and starts walking away. Again, getting to the door, the man calls him back. He comes back. Please, let me hear what it is, how many children there are, gets more details. And at that point, he goes out again, comes back with 100 ruble. The Alter Rebbe thanks him again, profusely every time. Thank you so much, writes a receipt, gets up, starts walking towards the door. At that point, it repeats itself. He calls him back. He says, please tell me more. I'm really feeling the pain. I didn't realize that a family can go through this. And he goes out and he gives him 1,000 ruble. Alter Rebbe gets up, starts walking out. This time they walk out the door. They're walking down the pathway from the door. The door is closed behind them. And at that point, the door opens. And he says, Rebbe, please come back. And the rabbi says to the Rebbe, he wants his money back. Anyway, they come back. And at that point, he gives him the total amount of money needed. He gives him the 10,000 ruble minus the 1,000 that, or 100 and kopek that he already gave. So I will interpret the story in a minute. Now I'm going to tell you a story with a mother that came to me one point and told me a very difficult story. Her husband passed away. She has 2 children. One is a 15-year-old son. Another is an older child who's away in college. And he is impossible, oppositional, defiant. Since he's 11 years old, doesn't want to listen. And she's crying on the phone and telling me all the difficulties she's having. Literally that he doesn't accept anything from her direction or from her love or nurturing, just doesn't want to have anything to do with her. So as I'm listening, I think this is the story that informed me. I got a picture of what's going on between them. And You have to understand, he literally, when she would ask him for something to bring from the other side of the room, he would just walk out. Literally just didn't accept anything from her, accept or give in any way. So I found out that he goes to school, to public school, and she would pick him up every day at 3:30 or some time in the afternoon. And he sat next to her. So I said, I want you to leave something on the floor where he's sitting, like a little bag, which is going to be very easy for him to reach and give you. And when he comes in, the next time, when you pick him up from school, ask for that little bag, which I felt there would be no way for him to say no. She can't reach over. He's sitting there, and he would just give it to her. And sure enough, he's in the car. And before she drives off, she says, you mind giving me that bag? And he just reached and gave it to her. That was the first time that he was able to actually interact with her in a positive way, even though minuscule as it was. Then she called me, she says, it was successful. What do I do now? She says, well, you sit next to him while you're eating. Ask him to hand you a fork that you're going to put on the other side of him so that he just passes it over, that you can't just go around him. Sure enough, that happened. And slowly but surely, he started opening up, and the wall that existed between them started melting away. That story of when I spoke to that woman, what inspired me was the story of the Alter Rebbe. Now I want to tell you another story of a woman who has a 2-year-old, and one day she comes home from shopping, 13 or 14 bags of groceries, puts it on the dinette or kitchen table, and picks up 2 bags to walk around the corner to her pantry to unload her groceries. While she was unloading a grocery, which took a couple of minutes, her 2-year-old went to the fridge, opened it up, took out the plastic container from the fridge, put it on the table, plastic container that holds eggs, put it on the table, climbed on the table, opened up the bags, or opened the bag that had eggs in it, took out that little container, opened it up carefully, and started moving the eggs very carefully from the styrofoam container to the plastic box, to the plastic container. 1 egg, 2 egg, 3 eggs. At the 4th egg, the mom comes back and she sees her little girl sitting on top of the table, moving eggs. She goes, no, you can't do that. Grabs the child, and the child runs away crying. So 15 years later, the mother is on the phone with one of her friends saying, my daughter, I love her. She does so well in school. We get along so well. But every time I ask her to do something, she just freezes on me. She won't help me in any way, shape, or form. I don't know what it is. I talk to my therapist. I talk to my friends. I don't know what's wrong. The daughter is on the phone with her friends saying to them, I love my mom. I get along with her so well, but something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is. But every time she asks me to do something, I just can't. It's like something is stopping me. So I'll start from the end story. the mother one day in therapy is telling her therapist how her daughter used to be this kindest, sweetest little girl. She said, what do you mean? She used to be so helpful. Till she was 2. And then she said, then one day, this is what happened, tells the story of the eggs. And the mom says, the therapist says, of course, you shut her down. She was very helpful, wanting to be there for you. And now she can't. She has no memory of that, but almost afraid to do anything for you because of, no, you can't do that. Now, let's go back. So how that is healed, by the way, once she tells the story, the mom tells the story to the therapist, and the therapist interprets it. The mother then goes back, brings the daughter in, and they have a conversation. Now the daughter's saying, oh my God, that could very well be true, because she doesn't have any memory of her being 2 years old and being shooed away from bringing it with the eggs. But she understands it, wraps her head around it, and then there's a possibility of her saying to herself, well, I'm not a 2-year-old. My mom doesn't want to hurt me. My mom doesn't mean to make it difficult for me. I'm just going to stretch myself, push myself to do what's right. And that way, slowly but surely, she understands that she needs to be as helpful as she wants to be, rather than something that happened to her in her life that was early in her life that will stop her. So that's one way. In the second story, with the little boy, with the 15-year-old, again, I didn't have the time nor the ability to go back in his life what stopped that, but the possibility was that he lost his father. His mother was maybe a little too rigid with him, whatever it is that informed him, but it was a need for the mom to open up his heart, to connect with her, and to somehow get him to do the right thing, so that slowly his heart was opened and he created change in his life. Now, let's go to our 3 characters in the first story. You have Moshe the miser, you have the rabbi, and the Rebbe. The Rebbe is the Alter Rebbe. So Moshe the miser, so before I actually go there, so there are many theories that tell us what shapes who we are as human beings. You know, the big argument of nature and nurture, or a combination of both, or our early childhood traumas, whatever it may be that shaped us. We do live by the stories that we tell ourselves, or others tell us. And we then come to conclusions about ourselves, of what our lives are like and what our lives become. I'm smart. I'm a generous person. We tell ourselves all these things. I'm a kind person. I'm not too smart. I'm a practical person. I know how to get things done. And, you know, that sort of becomes who our identity is. It's not always necessarily the truth or represent reality about who we are, but that's what we live by. So now let's talk about Moshe the miser. Let's think about what could have informed him. What makes him be who he is to facilitate this behavior? The possibility is that there was an emotional trauma that imposed upon him this emotional prison that he lived in. Probably grew up in a home that's where the environment that he received was very little affirmation or praise. So he believes nothing he has is good enough. He always feels that he fails. That he falls short in his efforts to please others and does not get the opportunity to learn how to feel proud of himself or his own achievements. Later on, as an adult, if he has achieved great success, which he obviously did in financially, his inner child still believes that his accomplishments are tainted, they're worthless. He could be super successful, and you see people like that all over the place in many ways, but on the inside, he feels anxious, and anytime anyone asks him for something, he feels that he needs approval from them. He freezes when he doesn't know what the answer is. And when he tried to give the kopek, he tried to get the approval for even one kopek, but if he got that thrown back in his face, he was devastated. He was totally mortgaged to his dysfunction, owned and operated by his suffering inner child mentality. And I'm introducing this concept called, it's a fixed mindset of thinking. That's the way I am, and I have no chance of changing. That's Moshe the Miser, which produced what he was. He was on one side very successful, on the other side he felt totally empty inside and not able to feel good about who he was. Again, until the Alter Rebbe came along and made him feel good, even for 1 second. And then he opens up. The rabbi probably grew up in a house of rigidity, black and white thinking. Again, fixed mindset. He's a bad man. There's nothing to talk about. You can't speak to him. He's not going to help us. We tried so many times. People don't change. People don't. So we're not even going to bother. Don't bother. And of course, then you have the Rebbe. So we're not going to analyze the Rebbe. He's a holy man. But the Rebbe puts this man in a safe zone and only sees all the goodness and kindness is in potential ability, gives him a lifetime worth of validation and nurturing in 5 laser beam focused, powerful interactions. And at that point, he opens up. So a little light pushes away much darkness. In his own way, the miser had no possibility of leaving his way of thinking because he didn't understand necessarily of what it is that was holding him back. But once he opens up and the Alter Rebbe gives him praise for the smallest of things, it's when change begins. And of course, that transformation is a exponentially fast one because you have a big tzaddik that's sort of laser beaming his kindness and his potential. In our lives, it would also mean almost the same thing, that we need to believe in ourselves that we can stretch and we can change. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a self-assessment. And I want you to listen to these statements and you will be able to say or test yourself whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And the chances are, if you're a growth mindset, then change would come but much easier. If you're a fixed mindset, it would be harder, but it could still happen. Because the brain is plastic. The plasticity of the brain means that it's like a muscle. And you can develop any kind of muscle if you work hard enough, if you stretch it and you push it. So, statement number 1. I'm a certain kind of person, and there's not much I can do or that can be done to really change that. If that represents you, that's a fixed mindset. That's statement one. No matter what kind of person you are, you can always change substantially. If you believe that, you're a growth mindset, and it will be easier for you to change. You can do things differently, but the important parts of who you are can't really be changed. If that's you, you have a fixed mindset. I have one more statement. You can always change basic things about the kind of person you are. Always change things about the kind of person you are. If you believe that, then you have a growth mindset. Becoming is better than being. Becoming is better than being. The fixed mindset does not allow people the luxury of becoming. They have to already be. And when you are, there's no chance of any, not no chance, but it's a difficult journey to change. When you learn new things, when we as human beings learn and acquire new things, there are tiny connections in the brain that actually multiply and get stronger. So when you listen to the story of the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, of how he slowly grew the openness to give for this man, it was again, the brain multiplying and becoming stronger in that direction. The more that you challenge your mind to learn, the more your brain cells grow. Then things that you once found very hard or even impossible, like speaking when you were a child. It was hard at first, but you learn. Learning how to speak a new language as an adult. Doing algebra, which I still can't do. They seem to become easy as time goes on, if you stretch and push. The result is stronger and a smarter brain and a better you. So when we understand ourselves better and we feel like we have a growth mindset, it would be much easier for us to move forward. But it would be more difficult if you have a fixed mindset. And I want to just touch upon a couple of things that will relate to the fact of what you need to grow towards as a mature human being, so you know where to go with your growth. I mean, all of us have ideas and understandings of where we want to be, but I'm going to give you a goal of what maturity is. I have a great big long list, but I'm going to go to some of the things that I've talked about, that I'd like to mention. So the first thing, again, is being responsible for your own health, physical, emotional, and intellectual, and then spiritual. Being responsible for your own health in an appropriate way, physical, emotional, intellectual, and then spirituals. Because if you build the ground from the ground up, this is not only about yourselves, but if you have children or grandchildren, it's first their physical health, their emotional health, their intellectual health. Then you move towards spirituality and closeness to God. Then there is having a healthy relationship with God in your life. Very important. Turning over to God the things that only God can handle. Letting go of control. Realizing you are not God. Very important. You know the famous story of the father-in-law who's interviewing his future son-in-law, and he says, what are you going to do for a living? He says, God will help. Where are you going to live? He says, God will help. How are you going to support your family? God will help. So he comes back to the wife, the father-in-law. He says, you know, he's thinking God is me. I'm the God because I'm going to give him this, and I'm going to say he's equating me and God. So realizing you're not God, exhibiting gracious strength, because some of us are sometimes gracious and sometimes we show strength, but in reality, they need to be synthesized. It needs to be gracious, but it also needs to have strength. Providing safety and security and stability in your life. Walking your talk. In other words, being congruent. Risking vulnerability by being open and transparent. Being honest and trustworthy. Being kind, caring, and considerate. Being assertive, not aggressive or passive aggressive. And this is a difficult one. Being patient, especially with those who irritate you. Being patient, especially with those who irritate you. So, you know, our most loved ones are susceptible to be the ones that irritate you sometimes the most. That's your test of showing your devotion to them. Having an accepting, non-judgmental attitude, very important to maturity. Being compassionate and merciful, but with boundaries. You know, some of us are compassionate and merciful, but have no boundaries. When you're helping someone and you're doing something for others at the cost of your loved ones, it no longer becomes that merciful and that compassionate. Having an attitude of gratitude, seeing the good in others, and sharing genuine compliments with them. Seeing the good in others is very important, but also being able to tell them what it is that you see. Persevering in spite of opposition and setbacks. So all of us have setbacks. But again, if you have a growth mindset, you will persevere and you will be able to face opposition and setbacks and get up again and move forward. So having said that, never let your past experience harm your future. Your past can't be altered, and your future can't be altered, and your future doesn't deserve the punishment. Never let your past experience harm your future. Your past can't be altered, and your future doesn't deserve the punishment. And being happy and hopeful doesn't mean that everything is perfect. It means that you've decided to look beyond the imperfections. And when you expect perfection, and with this I will close, you become allergic to who you are. because perfection is not possible. It's not possible to be perfect. And some of us make the mistake of asking of ourselves and of others in our lives to be this perfect person. And when they don't meet that perfection, we get an upset and we demean ourselves or others, and that doesn't work. And I want to conclude again with the answer to the possibility of change is about believing that it's possible. And today, even though a lot of Judaism believed in that, in this hope and possibility of change, today science believes the same thing. If you want to read something that will tell you all about it, there's a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge, Doidge. The brain that changes itself, meaning the plasticity of the brain. More or less what the theory is says, he's not too smart, he's brilliant, he's a genius, he's a dummy, she's a dummy. These words have been part of our culture. I'm talking about Jewish and non-Jewish, it's all over the place. But in reality, if you can tap into that possibility of growth minded, anything is possible. Anything literally is possible. And now I will entertain questions.
Thank you very much. If I may, Abba, which is father in Hebrew. I have a couple of questions that came in as you were talking. I'm going to try to put some of them together. And one of them mirrors a question that I have. So I'll ask that second. The first question is, so if I don't say anyone's words exactly, I'm trying to put these questions together. First, this idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. If that's the mindset I have, if I have a fixed mindset, how do I move to a growth mindset? In other words, is the answer simply is that you can change, and if you believe it, you'll change? Or where is the movement from a fixed mindset about a particular? I'm just going to tell you one of the other questions, and I think they'll be together. Can you have a growth mindset in some areas of your life and a fixed mindset in another area of your life? And how do you move from one to the other?
So we're most of the time, we're not all of anything. We have many parts of us. And yes, you can be a growth mindset, how you're relating to your children. And in your own life, you can have a fixed mindset. Or the opposite. You can be a growth mindset in your area of work and fixed mindset at home. Growth mindset as far as the potential of the company. You've been trained, you've been conditioned to understand how growth happens within a company, so you're going against what it is that you've learned at home. And that's not necessarily a contradiction, it's a reality of that's how it happens. At the same time, your question of how, if you do have a fixed mindset, how do you move beyond it? So the way I understand it is you have to have the biology of belief. And I try to answer that question with offering this book, which means if you read the science and you start understanding of how a autistic girl, one of the stories in this book is of a young lady, 22 years old, who's autistic and, can communicate, but has limitations in her understanding. One of her struggles was to learn how to tell time on a clock. Not where the numbers are numbered, but in the old-fashioned clock. And she was determined because she found out that the brain is plastic. And if the brain is plastic, her simple thought was, then I can do that. And she asked someone to make cards with every minute of the 24 hours. And she had the time frame of what time it was on the other side of each card. And she started looking at the front, 12 o'clock, 12:01, 12:02. And it took her a while. And the answer is now she looks at a clock and she can tell better time than most of us, because she sees immediately the seconds and the hour in a one glance, which means she perfected it. She was able to move beyond it. But the most important part of that capacity and ability is the belief, the biology of belief. And I have to tell you, when I'm trying to help people, if I have a person that says, therapy doesn't work. I come because my father wanted, my wife wanted, my husband wanted me to come. And I can see that there's almost like a wall. They're in their own imprisoned self, not believing the possibility. My first goal is to open up that possibility. And if I can't, I fire myself from that particular case. So hopefully that answers the question. So it's a matter of belief. And then once you believe it, if you have that capacity to open yourself up to that, then it's work, but you can change it. It's because it's a learned thing. It's not who we are.
So if I understand you correctly, and maybe taking it back to the story of the Alter Rebbe, either it's, you can be your own sort of Rebbe leader that appreciates the one kopek and then takes it, or you can have, or someone else, it can be learned or relearned. Perhaps children are naturally growth mindset, and we get older, we shut down. The second question that in a way encapsulates my question, a personal question, is you were very emphatic about health, and the last thing was then your spirituality. I found it curious. I'm a rabbi, you're a therapist, I'm a rabbi. So in my mind, if you have, and I'm sort of asking, apologize to the person who asked this question the way they asked it, but I'm going to ask it from my rabbi's point of view. If you have spiritual strength, then you will also have physical and mental and emotional. It should start with the spiritual strength, not with the physical health, mental or health. That was the word you used.
Right. So I hear the question. I understand what the struggle is, but the way I'm envisioning what I am saying is that when a child is growing up, you need to emphasize, what does the child do first? He needs to eat, he needs to sleep. His developmental stages are slowly but surely about physical health and safety. As the child grows, there is, even the beginning, it's attachment, it's security, it's safety, it's nurturing. These are all physical things. And if God planned it that way, and the way growth happens, you introduce spirituality last. In other words, at least on a teaching level or on a growth level, the first things are, again, physical, emotional, intellectual, and then let's say call it godly. So that's the way a human being grows. So maturity is what I talked about. So the question is, all of us, I think all of us, a big question, a big statement, but most of us have what I would call difficulty in our lives. None of us are perfect, definitely, as I said, but we're all struggling. So the first thing you need to look at, are you taking care of yourself? Are you in a good physical place? And if you take care of yourself physically, which means you're responsible to your physicality, remember, you're in this world and you're in a physical world. Talking about even on a spiritual level, we were all in the heavens as souls. God's not happy with our souls in heaven. He wants us in a physical body. So the body, Shmiras Haguf, to watch over our body is very important. It's a halacha. It's a law that says you have to take care of yourself. You can't be smoking. You can't be overeating. These are all things that are unhealthy to us. So if you have a dysfunction that is physical, the chances are that your relationship with the spiritual is going to be a little bit more difficult as a journey. So ideally, when you want to come from a place of less functionality and go to a total functionality, you have to first make sure that you're sleeping okay, that you're taking care of yourself, that your physical and emotional, intellectual needs are there. Then you can move towards a healthy relationship with the Ribbono Shel Olam, with God. So, yes, I think that the rabbi, if I can say so, sometimes don't necessarily check with the doctor if this man is healthy or not, and give him the spiritual journey. Because unfortunately, sometimes in a spiritual journey, the physical is not taken care of. And that it could work, but ideally you start from the physical. And in, I don't want to say that the rabbis make the mistake of that, but there is a possibility that sometimes that is not the appropriate approach. And it could be a better approach if you were sort of licensed to say, Moshe, you need to take care of yourself. I see you're falling asleep in the middle of my class. Are you sleeping? You need to be able to relate to them in a way that says you need to take care of yourself, even though it may not be your place.
Okay. If you can mention the name of the book one more time. Some people are asking for that.
The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. It talks about the plasticity of the brain.
Thank you. Thank you very much.